Hello, I'm back. Sorry it's been so long. I've been busy. Got married, finishing up school. Now we're talking about buying a house, which means this could be the last video I record in the OG setup. So that's kind of cool. Um, Sorry it's been like 5 months. I figured since this is still a relatively new channel and I want to give you all sort of an idea of who I am as a person. I don't love the idea of a comprehensive all-time top 10 list because that's not really how I think my opinions work. Usually I find myself influenced by several different books or pieces of media at a time. Every book that I will mention in this video are some of my favorite books. They are perfect books. Um, if I had to rank them on which ones I think about more often, ones that I enjoyed reading more, um, this is probably what that list would be. So for the year 2025, these are the top 10 books that I find myself thinking of the most, that I enjoyed the most, that are the most important to me currently. There will be a few classics in this list that may rank below some more contemporary pieces, and that's okay. You know, I still love all of these books. I think they're all incredible. But if we're talking about which ones I personally enjoyed more, it's a matter of opinion. You know, and that's the great thing about the internet, is that you can share your opinion without worrying, you know? So I'd love to hear from y'all. What are your top 10 current favorite books? This list will change year over year, shuffling some books out, keeping some other books where they are, moving some up, moving some down. This is just where everything lies currently. All right. Firstly, number 10. We've got Granddaddy Fantasy himself, Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, with The Hobbit. This book is very important to me. I remember my dad at one point turning on the Rankin Bass animated The Hobbit. Real ones, no down to Goblin Town. I loved it. I mean, it was my first real exposure to fantasy. I saw that before I even saw the 3 Lord of the Rings movies. This book has made me love reading twice. So in middle school, I read it for the first time and I loved it. And I read, the Percy Jackson books, the Harry Potter books, that middle grade fantasy. First time I read the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well. The second time was about 2 years ago. And no, actually at this point, it would be probably 3-4 years now. I was living alone and I was like, man, I just feel like I'm on my phone all the time. And I found this really cool 75th anniversary edition at a Barnes & Noble. I picked it up and listened to the Andy Serkis audiobook along with reading it, like active reading. And I mean, I was just like, man, I got to do more of this. I feel healthy. I feel rejuvenated. And so that's my experience with The Hobbit. On to number 9. Number 9 is The Little Prince, or Le Petit Prince. This is a really cool Folio Society edition of it. I love this book. This is a children's book about a pilot whose plane crashes, and he meets a little guy, a fun little guy, who teaches him a lot of life lessons. And this is one of those books that you can kind of read 2 different ways. On the surface, it's just sort of like a fairy tale, and then it's one of those stories that just the more you think about it, you understand the more layers there are to it. I don't really want to give too much away because I know it's a very popular book, but I feel like there's still so many people who haven't actually read it. And it is such a quick read. I mean, it's like an afternoon. Remember, one of my best friends, Kobe, and I, when we first met back in like 2019, he'd hit me up to play bass in his band, and I remember we met up, just the 2 of us. I ran over a couple songs with him, and we sat and talked for like 2 hours in his mom's house about this book and music, but it all kind of kept coming back to this book, and it's a very special book to me. I love it. Up next, numero 8. Babel by R.F. Kong. This is a more recent pick for me. I read it last year, and it has just grown on me. Like this, I don't think this was even in my top 5 from last year when I did my TikTok end of the year list, but I mean, it just has creeped up the ladder. One of the most effective revolutionary novels I've ever read. Its depictions of racism, sexism, xenophobia, are very affecting and very well done. Also, the magic system is beautifully done. It is one of the coolest magic systems in a book that I've ever read. The ending is powerful, and I think about it very often. I cannot recommend this book enough. Number 7. Another Folio Society edition. I got Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. This is another book that I read in kind of like upper middle school, right before high school. For a long time, this was my favorite book. I remember my mom and because I have trouble reading, like focusing and reading. And I remember my mom actually read like the first half of this book to me to like get me into it. I remember I actually picked it up and finished the last half of it because I wanted to know what happened so bad. And I mean, you can joke about it, but like I was actually afraid of dinosaurs like coming to get me. The tension and horror in this book is done so well. And if you've never read it and you're a fan of the series, oh my God, you have to. It is so good. And in my opinion, so much better than the movie. Even though I love the movie. I love dinosaurs in general, but I mean, let's be real here. This is a classic in sci-fi. Number 6. Morningstar by Pierce Brown. This is such a good culmination to a trilogy. I know this is kind of book talk bro of me to have, Red Rising on here, but I mean, they get famous for a reason. They're very, very good, like, rock and roll literature books. I think that the emotional highs on this book sort of beat out Golden Sun, which is kind of a controversial opinion, I guess, but hey, it's my opinion, and that's okay. Everybody has one. Aside from one other book on this list, this is my favorite ending to a trilogy. Because what gave me pause was the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I think is probably like the best trilogy ever. Return of the King is not my favorite Lord of the Rings book. It's The Two Towers. This trilogy interrupted my entire TBR. It basically just blew a hole in my plan for the latter months of last year's TBR, and for good reason. They are just very well done books. I haven't read past here. I'm not going to do that until Red God comes out because I don't want to get Kingkiller chronicled, but as far as the original trilogy goes, this is easily my favorite of the 3. And potentially one of the greatest sci-fi books of all time. In my opinion. Book number 5. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Now this seems... this could look at first glance like, oh, well, he's got to throw some classics on here. Why not the ones that he read in middle school? But this book is actually really important to me. I mentioned earlier how my mom used to like really help me get into reading. This is her favorite book. And on my 12th birthday, she gifted me this copy of it. On the inside, signed by her. It's a really nice sentimental note. Harper Lee has just such a strong narrative voice that there are times while you're reading this where you forget that you're even reading it, and it's not just, or some woman telling you about her childhood growing up. It's a very inspiring book because it teaches you that even though the system that you operate in could be primarily, corrupt or bad, being able to do the right thing is still powerful. It's still affecting, even when you don't get the results that you want. And like it deals with some really harsh realities of the time and realities that unfortunately haven't quite gone away, living in the South, you know. Its depiction of racism through the eyes of a child who hasn't been, you know, completely indoctrinated into that mindset yet is really, really powerful. Yeah, this book, just given its history with me personally, will always have a spot somewhere in the top 10 books I think about the most on a regular basis. Can you guess who this is by? Brandon Sanderson, Words of Radiance. I don't think there will ever be a high fantasy book that has made me as excited as this book has. The highs in this book are just so absolutely riveting. The world building is insane. I won't spoil exactly what happens, but the duel in this book, you know the duel if you've read the book, is, I think, probably the greatest fight scene in any piece of fiction ever. I mean, like, it is just that good. Getting back into reading as a young adult, Brandon Sanderson was an author that I'd heard a lot about, you know, on the internet, and one that I very quickly was drawn into the, you know, the hubbub about, and I think it's for good reason. I mean, he really does write some great fantasy. And this book specifically, as somebody who's always struggled with mental illness, you know, their whole life, such an honest depiction of it, and seeing these characters like overcome it was just very powerful. That's one of the things I loved about The Way of Kings as well, Kaladin's whole journey. But Shallan in this book really shines, and is potentially my favorite arc in any of his books up to this point that I've read. I'm still working on Wind and Truth. I'll get there, but books 1 through 4, I mean, this is easily my favorite. Number 3. Almost held up 2 fingers. Number 3. 5 Decembers by James Kestrel. This book was recommended to me in a video by Man Carrying Thing, and I just loved the art style, you know, the classic like Pulp Fiction look to it. And I kind of went in blind. He reviews it and says a little bit to sort of get you to want to read it, but I really did not expect to enjoy this book as much as I did. This book moves so fast, and it just wraps you up in the whole thing as you go. And the thing that I love most about it is not just the mystery, not just the action, but I think it's Joe, the main character. Joe McGrady as a protagonist is one of the more interesting ones. Everything that I expected to be in this book was there, but there's also just so much more to it. I was very pleasantly surprised, because you go in expecting, you know, a hard-boiled mystery thriller, globe-trotting adventure, and you get that, but you also get a really great meditation on autonomy and purpose, and I think my favorite love story I've ever read, which might sound crazy to some people, but this is such an underrated book. Even after he talked about it, and I've seen more people talk about it because of that video, which is really cool. I love that he's turned more people on to this book, because more people should definitely read it. It's a perfect thriller. It really is. Book number 2. My second favorite book, Oat. That's what the youths are saying now, is Oat of all time. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is one of those books that I can't really say anything about. I really want to. I love this book so much, and it's such a quick read. I mean, like, it's I can't really tell you what it's about, because that was such a big part of the fun I had reading it. I'll try. I'll do my best. It's about a man, and you're reading his journal, and he's in a strange place. And okay, yeah, that's all I can say. But for those of you who have read it, you'll know that the mystery at the heart of it is really what makes it such a cool page turner. I read it on my honeymoon because I was like, hey, this is short. I hear it's good. I can read this on a flight or two. I remember when I finished it, I didn't love it. I really had to sit with it for a while, and it was just like the more I thought about the subtext and what it could mean, the more I understood it and the more I loved it. This is a book that I'm planning on doing another long form video essay about, like I did with the First Law trilogy. And I have a couple of other videos that I want to do before that, but I cannot wait to talk about this book more in depth and what I gleaned from it, what I got out of it. But yeah, I mean, there are not enough words to describe how cool of an experience it is unraveling the Gordian knot of what this book is. But yeah, wow, just a phenomenal novel. This is this is a 5 out of 5. All these books are, but I mean, really just perfect book. That brings us to number 1, my current favorite book. This will probably come as no shocker to the people watching this, but it is a Joe Abercrombie book, and it was really hard for me to choose out of the ones that I have read which one I liked the most, because the First Law trilogy is really so this is gonna sound so dumb, but it is really such a trilogy. I don't feel like you can divorce any of the 3 books from the rest of them. And so picking just one book out of that trilogy felt very difficult. And so I kind of went back and forth on a book out of that and one of the standalones that I've read, which also kind of is its own trilogy, which is another video that I'm working on. But the book that I currently think about the most, and my favorite book at the moment, is Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. The ending of this book, whenever you really understand the point that I felt Joe Abercrombie was trying to make on, can people change? Can people convince themselves that they are good people? How easy is it for them to do that? How do these cycles of, violence and history repeat? I'm kind of stupid, and when that moment hit me at the very end, it just blew my mind. Actually, I stole this phrase from my friend David. Rock and roll literature, it's not, Les Miserables, right? But it doesn't really need to be. It doesn't need to be anything else. It tells the story it's trying to tell perfectly. The character work in this trilogy is unlike anything that I've ever read. So whereas the Stormlight Archive has the optimist side of my brain going, yeah, these are some of the most realistic characters I've ever read as far as, their struggles with depression goes. The pessimist side, the cynic in my brain goes, but this is also how people act. And this is, people who are like this. This is my favorite culmination to a trilogy. I feel like the elephant in the room is, well, the Lord of the Rings trilogy exists. Yes, I know, and it's perfect. And that's like people ask, when you ask somebody like, hey, what's your favorite book? And they're like, Genesis. And you're like, okay, come on. And while, Return of the King is probably a better written book, not probably, it is a better written book, it didn't really affect me as much as Last Argument of Kings did, which is like a crazy thing to say out loud, but this has sat in the back of my mind more heavily than Return of the King ever did. It's made me consider my thoughts on humanity as a whole more than Return of the King did. Even though it's perfect and I love it, at the moment, this is my favorite culmination to a trilogy and my favorite book. Now that will probably change. I'm fully aware that recency bias is a thing. This time next year I could be saying Sword of Kaigen is my favorite book of all time, which I have not read, but plan to. So that's it. That's my top 10 current favorite books. I'm sure this list will change dramatically over, the next year or so. But we'll just have to make another video then. But that's where I'm at right now. I've got a couple other videos down the pipe that I will be updating you all on. I know it's the most cliche thing in the world, but if you enjoyed this video, give it a like if you liked it. And subscribe if you think that I'm funny and cool. If you don't do those things, I'll know about it, and it will affect our relationship moving forward. So it'll make me sad, and then you'll be sad that I'm sad, and it'll be like that weird thing where it's like we see each other in public, and like you're like, oh shit, I don't want to see this person. That's what it'll be like if you don't subscribe. So, peace. That's all for today. Bye.